So today we're going to take a look at how you solve for exponents with decimals. If you remember, exponents are a mathematical operation that involves the repeated multiplication of a number. The base tells us what number we're going to multiply, and the exponent index tells us how many times we're going to multiply it. If you watched my video on exponents before, you know that we have looked at solving for exponents and whole numbers. The more you multiply a whole number by itself, the bigger the resulting number will be. But what happens when we perform repeated multiplication of a decimal? Well, since a decimal is basically a fraction, we know that multiplying a fraction times a fraction results in numbers that actually get smaller. Think of it this way. When you have a piece of something and you multiply it by a fraction, you are essentially getting a piece of a piece. Let's look at one example of how this happens when you evaluate an exponent when the base is a decimal. Once we get the steps down, we can look at a few more examples to make sure you got it. Evaluate the exponent of 3/10 squared. The first thing you want to do is write down what this really means, or write it in expanded form, and that means 3/10 times 3/10. Next, let's multiply the numbers that we know by removing the decimals. We multiply 3 times 3, and we get 9. Let's write down 9, and we now know that since 9 is a whole number, the decimal is assumed to be to the right of the 9. Let's put one down here, just so we remember, and now we're going to adjust for the decimals. Remember, a decimal is a fraction, and when you multiply a fraction times a fraction, the numbers get smaller. In order for the number to get smaller, it means you have to move the decimal to the left. Notice in this example, we had 3/10 times 3/10 in our expanded form. We had 2 digits that were behind the decimal. That is 2 digits in total. We can now look at our number of 9 and move the decimal to the left 2 spaces. We fill in the space with 0 and our answer becomes 9/100ths. You can help yourself with decimals in one of 2 ways. You can draw arrows to the left and fill the spaces in with zeros, or you can do like I do, and that is add the zeros to the left first, move the decimal, and then get rid of any extra zeros. So if we look back at what we just did, the steps were: write the exponent down in expanded form. Ignore the decimals and multiply the whole numbers. Count the number of digits to the right of the decimal in the expanded form. Move the decimal to the left by the total number of digits. Next example, 5/100ths cubed. First, we write down our problem in expanded form. 5/100ths times 5/100ths times 5/100ths. Next, we ignore the decimals and multiply the whole numbers. 5 times 5 times 5 equals 125. We assume there is a decimal after the 5 and 125, and now we count the total number of digits to the right of the decimal in our expanded form. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total digits to the right of our decimal in the expanded form. Finally, we move the decimal 6 spaces to the left of our whole number. We get 125 millionths. Next example, 1.1 squared. First, we write out our expanded form as 1.1 times 1.1. Next, ignore the decimals and do the multiplication. 11 times 11 is 121. Next, count the number of digits to the right of the decimal. Here we have 2. Move the decimal to the left 2 spaces, and we get 1 and 21/100ths. Next example, 2/100ths to the 4th power. Start out by writing it in an expanded form. 2/100ths times 2/100ths times 2/100ths times 2/100ths. We ignore the decimals and we multiply it as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and we get 16. We count the number of digits to the right of the decimal, and we get 8. 8 total. We move the decimal to the left 8 spaces, and we get 0.0000016, and that looks like it's 16 billionths. It's a tiny number, whatever it is. Last example, 12/100ths squared. First, write it out in expanded form. 12/100ths times 12/100ths. Next, we ignore the decimals and multiply the whole numbers, which is 144. Count the digits to the right of the decimal. Here we have a total of 4. move the decimal to the left 4 places, which equals 0.0144 for 144 10,000ths. So that's a wrap on exponents of decimals. If you want some more practice on this topic, head on over to improvedmath.com and check out my page on exponents with decimals. It has a link to a free printable worksheet and answers. I'll drop a link to that page in the description. If this video helped you out, you guys know what to do. Give me a like or subscribe if you haven't. See you next time.